Good morning. Welcome to those of you who consider New Hope your church home. Glad to see you here again. And for those of you for the first time, we're glad you joined us today. And for those of you in your third or fifth or sixth time and trying to decide if this is the place, we're glad you've come back to check us out. And hello to all those joining us around the world through the internet. And today, for the very first time, we're streaming live on Facebook. So hello, all our Facebook friends. Do us a quick like there. That'll be great for us, all right? So we said all our pleasantries now. Let's get into the meat of the stuff, all right? Have you ever had somebody call you something that caught you off guard? No, not that thing. Something positive, all right? You ever had that experience where somebody said something about you or said something to you and you went, really? You know, maybe they looked at you and they said, you know, you're cute. Maybe they said you're pretty. Maybe they looked at you and said, you're beautiful. And for a moment you went, I'm not sure what to do with that. You know, maybe you fixed some problem at work or did some great, work on a project or something came back and somebody looked at you and said, you know, you're really smart. And you thought, for just a moment, you thought, I wonder if that's true. Or you did something nice for somebody and they came along and said, oh, you're so sweet, you're so kind, you're so thoughtful, so generous. Have you ever had somebody call you something that made you stop and think, what if what they just said is true? Because sometimes when somebody calls us something, it changes how we see ourselves, but more importantly, it can change how we live our life from then on. And today we're going to go to a portion of Scripture in this sermon series called Crazy Talk, looking at these crazy things that Jesus talked about. And we're going to look at what Jesus says to a group of people very different from us, because they weren't sitting in a nice room on a Sabbath day. They were sitting on a hillside, a dusty hillside, listening to this guy talk. And this is Jesus' sort of premier sermon. This is when he lays it all out at the very beginning. It's a long sermon, as we talked about the last couple of weeks. And in the midst of this, he will say something to them today in this portion that we're going to look at. It is not about this is what you need to do, or this is what you need to become, but this is what you are. And for them, it was a big, hard question to take, a big idea to take, because they did not feel like what Jesus called them, and they had a hard time believing it. Just like we sometimes have a hard time believing what others may say about us. So before we jump in and get over to Matthew chapter 5, I invite you to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Lord, we have sung, we have watched, we have prayed, and hopefully in the midst of all that, we have somehow connected with you already. That we have sensed that you are really here today. And that you're here not just in a general way, like you're always here, but that you're really here. And there are some of us in this room today that need to hear your description of us. A description of us that will set us back and make us think, is that really true? Can that possibly be? Because some of us have heard so much junk in our lives. Some have been called some things that aren't very nice. Some have had words thrust on us that we've earned but we hate. But today I pray that you would just speak into our lives. That word or that term or that thing that we need to hear today. And it may be different things for different of us, but we all come with a longing and a need to not only be reminded, but to be redirected in our lives. So we just ask you to use this time we're together to do something only you can do. And we pray that we'll be ready for that in your name. Amen. So we've been in this series, and Jesus is talking to this group of people. And they're, let's face it, most of the people in Israel at that time were poor people. And if you've traveled sometimes overseas, you will discover that there are great distances. You know, the middle class in most places are poor, and there's the rich, and there isn't much really in between, and that's the experience of people here. And they were just trying to kind of get by. And they're not just trying to get by, they are struggling to. Because while they live in the promised land, and this is their home, it doesn't feel like home because the Romans have occupied it for years, and are going to occupy it for years in the future. And so they battle with that. How can this be God's place that he's put us, and yet these other people, these foreigners, these Gentiles, these pagans are ruling us? How does that all work out? And it makes life hard, and it makes life worse. And then not only that, but we have our own corruption in our systems, and we have people that are always telling us we're not good enough, we got to do more and more and more for God. And what do we do with all this stuff? And it's into that kind of mindset as these people sit there that Jesus begins to talk to them and begins to tell them not what they should be, but what they are. And here's the words of Jesus. He looks at that group and he says, you are the salt of the earth. Which I have to imagine somebody's in the crowd going, ooh, Jesus, good question. You know, salt in our culture is an important thing. You know, it's a preservative. It's something that not only is it a preservative, and it's more than taste for them. It was a preservative. It was something that was important. In fact, it was so important it was really valuable. It was so valuable that the Roman soldiers got part of their pay in salt. Because salt they could put on their meat, they could rub it on there, they could put it on their fish, they could put it on their vegetables, and it would make stuff last longer. It was a key commodity, and everybody wanted salt. And so they're wondering, Jesus, how can this be? How can this be that we're the salt, we're the preservative, that we're valuable that way? That doesn't make sense, Jesus. Especially when we know that we're not even free to do what we want to do in our own country. To which Jesus says, hang on, because you are the salt of the world. And by the way, if the salt loses its salty taste, that is, it becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? To which people in the crowd are going, what in the world are you talking about, Jesus? You just said we're salt, this valuable thing, and now you're saying if we lose flavor, we're no good anymore? And Jesus says, well, hold on, it gets better. It, in fact, is not just not valuable, it's good for nothing except to be thrown out and walked on. To which you have to wonder, what in the world are you talking about, Jesus? Have you ever read this passage and wonder what in the world he's talking about? I mean, you're the salt of the earth. What in the world does it mean to be salt? And I've heard sermons, and you probably have as well. You know, it's about being taste and being, tasteful for people, and salty, and putting a desire to make them thirsty for God. Or being this idea of a preservative. That we're here to preserve the godly culture in this world, and we're the only thing keeping this planet surviving. The problem with that is that for salt to do its work, it has to be rubbed on. It has to be sort of become part of what it's trying to preserve. And most of the people who tell you we're here to preserve don't want anything to do with those people out there. But Jesus is very clear. This is not what you should be. You are, by the very nature. Remember, this is a group of people who have not yet believed in him as their Savior. They don't believe in him, the Messiah. They just have heard about this guy, wonder if he is. And to that group, Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. And by the way, you are the light. The light that gives light to the world. To which they say, okay, we get this one, Jesus. Jesus, I agree with you there. That makes a lot of sense because we understand from all our Old Testament prophets, we understand from Moses, we understand from all the stuff, writings down from there, that yes, we as a Jewish nation are supposed to be the light of the world. That we're supposed to live our lives in such a way and be such a God-centered kingdom and nation that people will come and they will go, man, look at those Jews. They got it all figured out. We ought to go get some of what they got because we don't have that in our nation. So we understand this idea of being a light to the world. And Jesus will go on this, and he says, but not only that, a city that's built, that is set on a hill, cannot be hidden. And they go, that's right. We get this one. We don't understand the salt thing at all, Jesus, but this one we understand. Because they would look in the hills, they would see these houses made out of this white limestone, and the sun would reflect. They could see them in daytime and at nighttime. In a dark valley, you could see the hills lit up from these little lanterns. They would understand that makes sense. Yeah, you can't hide a city on a hill when it's lit up. And people don't light a lamp and then hide it under a basket. To which they all say, "That's exactly right, Jesus. Preach it, brother." Because that would be stupid, right? How many of you go camping? I feel sorry for you. But if you go out camping and you light a lantern and somebody covers it up, everybody goes, "What are you doing?" Right? Because that would be we can use the word dumb, that would be a dumb thing. That's right. So they're with Jesus on this. It makes sense. Nobody covers stuff up. And then Jesus goes on and says, "Not with that. They put it on a lampstand so the light shines for all the people in the house." And they say that, "We're with you on this, Jesus. That makes perfect sense." Because they lived in these one-room houses. Everything happened in that one room. And so if you lit this little lantern or this candle and you put it on the floor, not very many people get to see stuff. But if you put it up high in the room, now it wasn't real bright, but at least more light got out. To which they would say, "We got this one completely, Jesus." That makes sense. But what about this salt thing? And for us, we wonder about, what about this light thing? Because I thought Jesus was the light of the world, right? And he's going to tell us we're the light of the world. I mean, I don't want to get a big head, but that seemed like a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, a lot of ideas. But to this group of people, I want you to notice Jesus does not say you need to try to be salt or you need to try to be light. He simply says you are. In fact, I want you to write this down. Here's this point. You are something. I want you to say that with me. I am, but use I am instead of you are, okay? Because it won't work if you say you are, because then you're talking about me and I'll be talking about you and it won't work, right? So here we go. I am, and here's even better than that. You are something for a reason. Jesus would say you are salt, and you are light, and you are that for a reason. To which we sometimes go, okay, yeah, I can kind of see, but I'm not so sure about being something, salt, light, that I'm that for a reason. You know, I'm not always sure. I've got this project at work, and I'm just, pulling my hair out. I can't quite figure it out. It's kind of making sense. I'm working on some finances at home and trying to make everything balance and budget, and it just it doesn't seem to work. I'm struggling at school, and I'm trying to get all, finals are coming up. How many of you got finals coming up, by the way? I feel sorry for you. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, yeah. The finals are coming. It's that time of the year, finals are coming up. End of the year, I can't stand all this. I feel so inadequate. And there's a reason you feel inadequate. You are. I'll give you the reason. You are. We all are inadequate. And when Jesus says you are something and you're something for a reason, we typically say, "Oh yeah, that's great," but then we kind of take a step back as we think about our lives. But here's my question. What if where you're at purposefully, intentionally, and specifically? You're thinking, well, hold on, Mike. I went to school to be an engineer, and I'm working construction. I'm not where I'm supposed to be at. But let's play with me for a second. What if you're where you're at purposefully, intentionally, specifically, even if it's not all you thought it would be, want it to be, or want to be? What if you are strategically placed where you're at, just like this group of people who Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. You are. Not you're going to be, not to try hard to be, but you are. See, who you are and where you are who you are and where you are for a reason. To which we say, oh, no. And to which Jesus says, oh, yes, 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 yes. To which we say, no, 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 Jesus, let me tell you here. Let me just tell you, I am here not because of who I am or because I'm supposed to be here for a reason. I'm here because I met this guy in New York City, and he was kind of cute, and we kind of did it for a while. I thought it was love, but not so much. But yeah, and he said, hey, I got a job down in D.C., I got a promotion. Come on down here, baby, ooh, baby, ooh, baby, ooh, baby. And I followed him, and I came down here, and it was okay for a while, but then he dumped me, and now I'm here, and all I'm here doing is saving up money so I can move back to New York City. That's why I'm here. I'm not here for any strategically planned purpose on your part. To which Jesus would say, oh, yes, you are. If you're part of God's people, which is the context of who they were, and today we would use the language, if you are a follower of Jesus, you are who you are and where you are for a reason. Even though you say, oh, no, 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 no. It can't be like that because I'm working in a spot that, again, is not my field, is not what I want to do. I don't want to do this forever. Or I'm going to school. I'm not going to the school I really want to go to, but I'm going to this school because just taking the basics and knocking those things out so I can get the other stuff together, get my financing together, get my grades up so I can get to where I want to be. Or I was a freshman this year, and I'm a freshman. What can a freshman do except stay out of lockers and stay away from trash cans, and try to stay out of trouble, right? But Jesus would simply say, you are. You are salt, and you are light. Salt and light. You are something for a reason. In fact, he doesn't finish there. He goes on more. Not only does he say you're salt, not only does he say you're light, but he says, in the same way, that is, you put this lampstand up high in the room that a hill can't be covered up. In the same way, let your light shine before others. That is for people to see. And here's how we hear this passage so often. So that they will see that you go to church and will think you are a good person. Because come on, we all know that lights, they can be too bright, and I don't want to be too bright around people. I don't know if you put too much salt on food, it tastes bad. In fact, I've heard somewhere that a lot of salt's bad for you, so I try to keep that salt content down, I just want to be left alone. I just want to know that I'm good with you, God. Know that I got the assurance of heaven someday, God. And I'm just trying to get my life together, my act together, not necessarily kind of think about all these other people. So when I get up and go to church on a Saturday morning, I want them to say, why is he all dressed up today? Why is she looking so good today? It's not a work day. What's going on? Oh, they're going to their church. Oh. And I've done my part. Just leave me alone the rest of the time, right? I'll wave at them when I drive in my neighborhood. I'll wave at them when I drive out of my neighborhood. And let's just leave it at that because I'm not so comfortable being the salt of the world or the light of the world. But Jesus actually put it this way. So that they will see the good things you do. They'll see the good things you do. And will praise, that is glorify, that is give honor to your Father in heaven. It's a reminder again that this has nothing to do with us. Though we think it has everything to do with us. Jesus' point is simply this. Let them connect your lifestyle with your Father's goodness. Let them connect your lifestyle with your Father's goodness. Which means we have to figure out how to live our lives openly and honestly, not only before God, but openly and honestly before our neighbors, before our coworkers, before our families, before our friends, before our spouses, before our exes, Yeah, I thought somebody would cough on that one. Thank you. Good timing. Which is where it all begins to hit for us, right? When we think about the implications of what it means to be salt, what it means to be light, we get uncomfortable. We begin to wonder about this whole let them connect your lifestyle with your Father's goodness, and how does that kind of work, and how does that look, and what if I'm not doing a great job, and I'm just not good at this stuff, But here's the reality. To that group of people that Jesus said those two statements to, that you are salt, that you are the light, something happened. Because in less than 300 years, you're thinking less than 300 years, Mike, that sounds like a long time. In the span of things, it's not that long a time. It's not that long a time to go from 13 people, or 84 people, or 100 people, to where literally this group of people went out and changed the world. And they did it not through powerful preaching. They did it not through amazing worship. They did it not through, night-long prayer times. They did it because something happened to them. And they believed that they really were salt, that they really were the light. But in a sense, they really were the hope for this planet. So here's a point how to make this work in your life. Because sometimes we wonder, how could I possibly be part of something like that? How could I change the world? And the reality is, all of us have within ourselves the ability to change this world. But our problem is it's within ourselves. And it stays there, and it dies there. It doesn't do anybody any good. And when I say we can change the world, I'm not necessarily talking about going out and changing everything all by ourselves. But all of us have within our power the ability to change somebody's world. And one of the ways you can do that, one of the ways you can be salt and light, is by being just annoying enough to where people pay attention because you live an unlike life. Now I want you to notice I said just annoying enough. Key, right? And what I mean about annoying enough is that people kind of see you and they think, why is season so nice all the time, This is pretend season, I know. So yeah. You're in a good spot again today, by the way. Thanks. But why is she so nice? I mean, she's always so nice. Always so upbeat. Why is that? It kind of bugs me after a while. Everybody else has got stuff and she's got stuff, but she always seems to kind of float through it. Why is that? It kind of annoys me. But the annoying of the unlike life begins to say, I wonder what it is that's going on there. To be just annoying enough. Now, this does not mean, slapping on the Jesus sticker on your car and their car. Does not mean grabbing a bunch of literature and stuffing it in people's, shopping carts when they're not looking, leaving it in motel lobbies, you kind of walk in and walk out. It does not mean that kind of thing, all right? It does not mean going every day and telling them, I'm praying for you today. I'm praying that you believe in Jesus. I pray, it's not that kind of thing, all right? But it is taking those moments. It is taking that time that when you see somebody needing something, and that something can be something very practical, they're snow shoveled, which I hope we're done for this year. Right? Cleaning out the leaves, that'll happen. Mowing somebody, picking up the trash they got knocked over. It may mean noticing that something's been going on and just asking them if things are okay. And offering to pray for them or with them if they're okay with that. But it's figuring out and living out the truth that you are something. That you are salt, that you are light. And you do those two things for a reason. See, because here's what I know about you. Even though I may not know your story, know much about you, if you are a follower of Jesus, here's what I know about you. I know that if you are a follower of Jesus, you are a follower of Jesus because somebody was salt and life in your life. Isn't that true? Somebody did something that sprinkled a little bit, that preserved a little bit, somebody did a little, that shined a little bit. And the reality is, for most of those people that were salt and life in your life, they may not have any clue that they were salt or light. You come back and say, oh, thank you so much for saying this or doing that for me, and they kind of go, when exactly was that, right? I mean, I've discovered in the course of living the majority of my life now as a Christian, there are so many times when it is the times when I'm clueless that it seems like I'm most effective. You know, I've been around this pastoring thing for a long time now, and you plan, outreaches, and you plan programs and events, and you think, you're going to set up the event, you're going to move people, you're going to get to the point of decision, you're going to do all this kind of stuff, and then you can get results at those times. But oftentimes you don't get the kind of results that you thought, man, I put all this time and effort, but you'll get something else that somebody will come up and say something to you, and you think, do I even know you? Who are you again? But they'll say that something happened. See, and some of you in this room, are so thankful that we have people around this church that not only care about your kids, but that love your kids. And that have been salt and light in your kids' lives. And for a lot of them, they just do it because they love kids. They care about your kids. And so they pour their lives into it, not necessarily so I can be salt and light, but just because that's who they are. And I think that's a call for all of us, to be salt and light. See, in a world that isn't always right, good, or just so, and I'm guessing your world is not always right? Play with me here. It's not always good, and it's not always just so, it's not perfect. But in that kind of world, we're still to live our lives right, good, and just so. And here's the truth about all of us. We want to be special, noticed, and important to God and to others. And this starts early. And it starts often, doesn't it? Those of you that are parents, you have had the joy of them saying, Mommy, 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 watch me, watch me, watch me, or Daddy, 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 right? And you know what it's like for, and guys, teenage boys, they kind of get to that stage, and they got a girl, they're kind of checking out, hey, babe, how's it going, Watch this, I'll pick up something heavy, I'll do something stupid because I want to show, We all want to be special, noticed, and important to God and others. And here's the problem for us as followers of Jesus. We think we have to be perfect to merit that. That for us to be important to God, for us to be special to God, we got to be perfect, because if we're not perfect, how could God love something that isn't perfect? And the reality is, isn't that the lie we've always told ourselves? That I am not good enough. How could I be salt and light to somebody else when I can't even figure out how to take care of myself? But it's not going so good for myself. And it's a lie that always, always, always bleeds in, especially in a group like us, a fairly conservative Christian movement. And here's the thing I want you to take away today as we wrap this up. Jesus is not asking us to find holiness on our own. Because when he says to that group on that mountainside on that day, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world, there was no background check, there was no vetting process. Because Jesus not only knew, he also believed that what God had said was true, that we are made in the image of God. And God always, 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 always chooses us. And when we think it's because of how we perform or what we do or how good we have to be in order to get him to smile at us, we have missed the whole point. Not only of salvation, but even of creation. You are something for a reason. And the kind of dirty secret that we don't talk about, but is so true in this, we can get this whole warped up about wanting to be special and important to God. But God is not looking for an instantaneous, sanitized version of Mike or of you. And the reality is when we recognize that we are imperfect, that we aren't good enough, when we recognize, accept, and even celebrate our brokenness, it's in those moments we recognize just how good of a thing this is. God would look at us and say we're salt. And he would say we were light. You are something. We're going to play a little game as we close here. You helped me out before in this. You said, I am, right? So I want you to say, I am something. Yeah, play along with me. Yeah, okay. Wasn't clear on the game, apparently. All right, here we go. I am something. I am salt. I am light. All right, thank you for playing along there, right? That's important to say. Because when we say it, we begin to hear it. And when we begin to hear it, maybe we'll begin to believe it. So this is a question we've been asking every week, and we will continue to ask it. A little bit of variation each week. So as we close, it's simply this. What is it today that you most needed to hear, but least wanted to hear? I don't expect you to raise your hand and shout out, so it's okay. I'm just going to give a little moment of silence here just to let that sink in, all right? But what is it? What is it that you most need to hear, but you least want to hear? And if you can figure that out, you're one step closer for God to be able to do something in your life that he couldn't and wouldn't do without that recognition.